We are not doctors. Nothing in this podcast should be taken as medical advice. Consult your physician before starting any workout routine. This is the Martial Heart Podcast.
Hey, how are you? Welcome back. And this is, believe it or not, the third time I tried to do this tonight because I kept screwing it up. Everything was getting all jacked up with the audio, and it was mostly because of stupid things I was doing. But here I am. I'm finally here. And I thought tonight I would talk about exercise because it's important. But those of you who have known me for any number of years know that I've exercised frequently, often inappropriately, and doing really bad things to my joints and to my tendons and things like that. And that's why I have bad shoulders, I have bad elbows, I have bad knees, I have a bad hip. And now my lower back is, deciding to join in on the fun because I guess it didn't want to be left out. So one thing I didn't do much of, except when I had to, was cardio. And so there's a thing about you're going to exercise regularly, but are you doing the right kind of exercise, I guess, is the question everyone needs to ask themselves, because cardio is what's good for your heart, and it's good for your lungs and good for your lung capacity and your circulation and all those things. And for years, I avoided cardio exercise, like it was a drunk Bill Maher somewhere. But I exercised, I did cardio when I needed to. I did minimum amount of cardio to help my muscle growth and get them gains, But I also, ran and did whatever I needed to do in the military because they make you do it, because they're a tyrant, and they make you do cardio, and that's evil. So I've never been a fan of cardio. I think some of it was, later on, it was the joint issues and things like that. Running just really didn't work very well with my bum knee, and I really kind of tore up my knee at an early age. I was only about 19 when I just totally ripped up my meniscus and didn't get any surgery. They didn't really do a whole lot of that when you were in the military. If it was tolerable and you could actually still walk and do everything else, they were like, oh, you're fine. They weren't going to go in and do any kind of arthroscopic surgery to repair a meniscus or anything. So I walked on that and just kept re-injuring it over and over again for 30 years, basically, before having it repaired. And it was not fun to do cardio. It wasn't fun to run and jog or do any of that stuff. Or biking wasn't too bad. So sometimes whenever I was adding cardio to my exercise routine, I was usually doing it on a bike of some sort, a stationary bike in the gym. So it's that was a little bit easier on my knees. So as far as being like a runner, that was never going to happen for me. I ran when I had to. And I tell people now, if you see me running, you need to run too, because there's probably a bear. And people always think that's funny, but it's probably true. And I ran in the military. I would run. You had to do a push-ups, sit-ups, and a 2-mile run back then. They keep messing up and changing and implementing new types of physical fitness testing, especially in the Army these days. So I keep reading about it all the time. And back then it was very simple. It was you did push-ups, you did sit-ups, and you did a 2-mile run. And these events were timed, and you had to meet a certain minimum, amount of those things and come in the 2-mile run at a minimum time. And those times and the amount of, the number of iterations for, or repetitions rather, for push-ups and sit-ups changed the older you got. And your run time also changed the older you got. So it was I would say it was challenging, but it wasn't challenging enough that you had to be an athlete to pass it because you didn't. The people who were athletes, like I knew quite a few people. There were quite a few people that I encountered in the military who were just absolutely fitness lunatics, and they worked out all the time and would have insane cardio. I also, even when I was in basic training back in 1987, one of the people in my platoon, my training platoon, was a marathon runner, even as an 18-year-old kid. He had already participated in marathons. So he was lapping us on the 2 mile run and wasn't even breaking a sweat because he ran at typically a 4 minute mile or thereabouts. And we had like 18 minutes to do 2 miles. So he was done. He might as well have been eating ice cream by the time we came in. And I had another fellow that I was in the military with, a fellow NCO who was really, really into fitness. And in college, he had been a cheerleader. And I never really thought about it before, but apparently these cheerleaders are in phenomenal physical condition. And this guy could just get down on the floor and do 1,000 crunches and like it was nothing. He did that a couple of times a day just for fun. And but when we did the run, they would blow the whistle, or however they launched us. Usually it was a whistle of some sort or something stupid, and he would take off from the line at a full sprint, and he would sprint, not run fast, not jog. He would sprint as fast as he could run for the entire 2 miles, and then puke every time. He puked every time, but to him it was worth it. And he would come in at like 8.5, 8 minutes and 50 seconds, or I think the last time I did it with him, it was like 9 minutes and 2 seconds or something like that, which to me is insane. But he sprinted from the time they blew the whistle until he crossed the finish line at the 2 mile mark. And that was never going to be me. I was never envious of those people at all. I always admired them, their fitness level and their abilities, but I was never going to try to emulate them because I hate running, and I always hated cardio. And I think that started when I was a kid playing soccer in a soccer league, a city soccer league. I was probably 13, I think 13 maybe, 13 or 14, and soccer involves a lot of running, a lot of running. And when you're kids playing soccer, there's a lot of just running up and down the field. I think it's actually just disguised running because you just run up and down the field in your little, area, right? You're a fullback or a halfback or you're a wingman or whatever. And, you stay within kind of in your little zone, but you're basically just running back and forth for the entire like 40-minute, 45-minute game. And I think it's really just a way to get kids to tire themselves out so they go home and they don't give their parents any grief because it's bullshit. Soccer is bullshit. But anyhow, a lot of running involved. So wasn't really a fan, but it was where we were. There weren't a whole lot of choices when it came to sports. So I played baseball. I played basketball too, but I wasn't good at it. I wasn't a large kid. I wasn't tall or anything. So uh, I had to work on my jump shot and stuff because I was too short. I wasn't, everybody was just like pff, knocking the ball out of the air whenever I would try to score. So I was like a second stringer or something on the junior high basketball team. How embarrassing is that? That's not something you tell the world when you're talking about your own physical fitness and your physical abilities. But I pretty much didn't have any. When I was a teenager, I did taekwondo. I played sports. I was really good at baseball. Baseball was kind of my sport. And baseball didn't involve a lot of running. Baseball involved running if you hit the ball, and you had to run to first base. What was that? I don't know. When you're, it's not even 90 feet. I don't think when you're playing in junior high and stuff. But anyway, we You only had to run if you hit the ball or if you were chasing balls. So it was sprinting for short distances, and I was good at that. I could sprint for short periods of time. That whole endurance type running, even if it was just a slow jog and stuff, I always hated it. So the fact that I hated it made me not do it, even in order to stay in shape. So I was exercising a lot, but I just wasn't exercising the right way, I guess. Now, well, I wouldn't say the right way because I was in really good shape, but I wasn't exercising in such a way that was going to strengthen and protect my heart. And that's what cardio does. So I was building endurance and strength in my muscles, but not in my heart and not my circulatory system and things like that. So I, spent decades neglecting that part of my exercise and only doing the bare minimum that I had to do in order to like pass physical fitness tests or, cut a little bit of fat when I was trying to, get ripped a little bit because I had been bulking up or whatever. Now I needed to trim down and all that stupid, you know, vanity things that, we do. And that's why we go to the gym and, but anyway, you know what I'm saying? And so cardio, that's what we need to be doing. And it's a little too late now, but what doing more cardio did for me, and this was before the heart attack, by a couple of years, because when I went back to, I guess, quite a few years, I guess it was 2019 or something, when I decided to go back to karate, and because there's a local dojo here, and it's real close to the house, so I figured I can run up there and I can go to a couple of classes a week. I couldn't lift weights anymore because I had just been in a terrible accident. And it's an embarrassing accident, but I'd fallen down a flight of stairs. And it wasn't really my fault. Somebody had mopped the floor with some sort of solution that left it slippery. And this was in the winter time. So everyone walking in was tracking in water and stuff from the sludge and the snow and the ice outside. And whatever they had put on the floor had made it very slippery, while they had also put that on the stairs. And I was there to do some work. Feet went right out from underneath me on about the second stair down. And I went tumble, 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 boom, 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 all the way down. And I had several injuries, but the worst of which was a completely separated left arm. You always say that you dislocated your shoulder, but to me, that's not an adequate explanation because the humerus of my arm was under my pectoral muscle. So it wasn't supposed to be there. It was like here, if you can see. It wasn't up here where it was supposed to be. And sorry for the microphone distance thing, but over here might be a better idea to show you if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify. Like the tip of your shoulder is right here. That's the top of your joint. The what do they call it? The head of my humerus, which is your upper arm bone, and the head would be the top part that goes inside this joint, was over here, and that's not where it's supposed to be. So, uh, hurt like hell. Couldn't do a whole lot. No one helped me. I had to crawl back up the stairs, I guess, and while the security guy there just sort of asked if I was okay. And because being a very sweet and kind person, I told him I was fine. Yeah, and a few other things, and because you guys know me by now, right? I like to keep things inside. I I don't express myself well. And that's a complete lie for anybody who actually knows me. No one who has ever been around me anywhere ever has any question about how I feel at any given moment. In fact, that's what one of the people at work at my office says about me. It was like, we never have to wonder how you feel about things. And that's true. So, anyway, trips to the hospital. It was a very big ordeal. It took them like 4 hours to get my arm back where it was supposed to be. And I have this weird thing, and I'm just going to tell the whole world right now. Doctors often ask me if I was ever a drug addict because my system is incredibly resistant to certain types of narcotics, including things like morphine and propofol, stuff like that. You know, the drug they killed Michael Jackson with, which was funny. Anyway, they had 4 guys, 2 doctors and 2 male nurses, holding me down, trying to wrench my arm back to where it was supposed to be. Resetting someone's arm, resetting someone's shoulder is a fairly straightforward procedure as far as I can understand it, but only if it's going to go back in. So if it doesn't, worst case scenario, they can have to do surgery, go in and surgically fix it. But they just couldn't get it to come out of where it was and turn at the right angle to go back in. And so it was murdering me. It was really terrible pain. When I first got there, I was in a lot of pain. They gave me a shot of fentanyl. And then they gave me a Percocet. And then they came back in later and gave me another shot of something else. And then they had me in the procedure room, and they were working on my shoulder and working on it and working on it and working on it. And I was in incredible pain because I was just grunting through it and trying to let them finish. And it just wasn't going to go in. So he said, well, okay, we're going to have to do some things that you're not going to tolerate well. So we're going to give you a bunch of drugs, and you're going to enter into this twilight sort of condition where you're not going to be under general anesthesia, because then we've got to get an operating room. We've got to do this and do that. We're just going to put you like in this twilight, kind of thing. And then we're going to, that will relax everything, and we should be able to pop that back in there. I'm like, I don't care what you're doing. Just stop doing what you're doing now and give me some drugs. That was basically what I said. So he tells me, I don't know what's happening. Things are falling. Anyway, he says, this is going to be propofol. We're going to give you some propofol. And my first question was, isn't that what they used to kill Michael Jackson? And he thought for a second. He was like, well, yeah, I think that is. And I was like, oh, that makes me feel better. Give me lots of that drug. So anyway, the nurse comes in, and he tells her to inject me with whatever milligrams of this drug. And while she's doing it, he asks me to count backward. Like, that's their favorite thing, to make you feel stupid. They're going to dope you up so that you're, a little bit incoherent, and then ask you to count or do your alphabet or something. And they're just trying to embarrass you. They're just entertaining themselves, I think, is what they're doing. So count back from 100. Like, you're not supposed to be able to count 100 while you're being given an anesthesia. It's like usually if you reach, 10 or 15 for a general anesthesia, you're like out, you're done. But he asks me to count backward from 100. So I start. And about every 10 numbers, he tells the nurse to inject another certain number of milligrams into my system. So at 70, I've been hit several times. It's a large syringe, and it's got this milky fluid in it. And, it had a lot of it. So I don't know how much it was in the syringe itself, but she would inject some, the number of milligrams that he was telling her to each time he said something. And I don't know, milligrams, might have been micrograms. I have no idea, but I'm not an expert on those things. So keep going. At 70, I go, do you want me to keep going? Is something wrong? Yeah, keep going. And he tells her to put some more drug in there. On and on and on. I get down to 30, and I'm looking at the doctor going, I don't know what you want me to do. You want me to keep counting. Keep going. And he tells her to put more drugs in me. And I get to 0. And I go, well, what would you like me to do now? Shall I recite the preamble to the Constitution, or maybe I can recite the Declaration of Independence. And I said, also, I can quote most of the dialogue from Big Trouble in Little China. At which point, another nurse who was trying to hold my hand, lovely girl, terribly misguided. So I was actually holding my hand open. I was, when you're in pain and they're trying to wrench your arm back into a socket, which they have to pull it out of a socket and then back into a socket, and you're gonna squeeze your fist because it's in pain. I was doing the opposite. I was forcing my hand open as hard as I could so that I wouldn't squeeze this little girl's hand. And anyway, so that was kind of funny. But she says, "Oh, I love that movie," and I'm like, "Really?" So we start talking about Kurt Russell movies, and I even told her, "Don't watch Bone Tomahawk. It's like it'll scar you for life and things like that." And at some point, we're just talking about different Kurt Russell movies that we enjoy, and they start wrapping me up with something. And I asked if they had finished, if they gave up or whatever, and if I was going to have to go into surgery. And the doctor said, "No, we're done." So at some point, they put enough of this drug in me so that I didn't know what they were doing to me, but I was still completely coherent. And able to have conversations with people. And I even asked, because I thought maybe I missed something. I'm like, did I go unconscious or something? And they said no. And I said, well, did I ever at least stop talking? And she said, no. I guess nothing stops me from talking, even near overdosing on propofol. So we go through this whole ordeal, and I'm fine. I'm talking, I'm moving around, and my wife comes in and everything, and I'm like, okay, let's go. And I was ready to jump off the bed and go out to the car. And the doctor comes back after a while, and he was like, he asks me this question. He was like, I got to ask you. I was like, I know this is personal, but were you ever addicted to drugs? Like asking me if I was a heroin addict and things because of the way that my body reacted to this drug that they were giving me. And he was like, I've never given anyone that much propofol and had them remain conscious before. And then he said, I can't let you leave because I gave you more drugs than I have ever given anyone in this emergency room. And now I'm afraid to let you leave. So I guess he thought I was going to OD or something later. But we had to sit in the hospital like for 2 hours after the procedure was done because, anyway. So I don't know how we got there, but that was the accident, and that was the aftermath of the accident. So when I was done, I had already been getting cortisone injections in my shoulders and things because my shoulders had gone so bad. I got injured while in the military during a training thing, and it did something bad to my shoulders. And then, it just kept getting worse and worse. And I was exacerbating the whole situation by lifting heavy things. Because there was one point I was using about 320 pounds on a bench press machine, not free weights, because I didn't have anybody I trusted to hold that much weight over my head. So it was on a machine, but that's what I was using to do my repetitions when I was working out, doing chest and tricep day. So I was just destroying my joints because, as my doctor later put it, no one needs to lift that much weight. And he said, your joints aren't designed to do that. So I was essentially just destroying myself, and I had already injured them, and I was just making it worse. So they were injecting me with cortisone, and the doctor just kept saying, I can keep doing this and eventually give you surgery, or you could just stop lifting all that heavy stuff. But when I injured my shoulder, it kind of it ended that debate right away because I wasn't going to be able to for a long time. I was told it would, because of the amount of damage that was there, damage to the rotator cuff, damage to the bicep muscle, damage to the tendons and everything else, that it would be at least a year before I could return to a normal, what I considered a normal exercise routine, that it was going to be a slow process and there would be no weightlifting involved. So I already knew that for at least a year, there wasn't going to be any more of that. So I needed a way to stay in shape. So about 9 months into my recovery, well, I got approval from the doctor. It was okay for me to start exercising again, as long as I didn't try to lift heavy weights. I could do like resistance exercises, and I could do body weight exercises. I could go back to doing push-ups. And people who've known me for decades know that push-ups is a big thing for me. I do a lot of push-ups. I used to do a lot of push-ups, and I struggled to do a push-up at 9 months into recovery. So I had to start there. And I started with push-ups, and then it was like, oh man, hey, I made my way to 10 push-ups. And then after that, the strength started coming back fairly rapidly, and it would be like, hey, I can do 20 push-ups now. So that was like a big deal. I needed a way to stay in shape that wasn't going to involve me going to the gym and trying to lift a car. So I said, hey, I did martial arts for years, and it's a great way to stay in shape. I've missed it for a long time. Um, and I've always said for the last few years that I should go back to doing that because I enjoyed it so much. So I decided that that's what I would do to stay in shape. And I got online, I looked around, I found a local dojo or gym, whatever you want to call them these days. Not everybody calls it that. Where they did karate and Krav Maga, and they did some women's self defense stuff. They did some regular fitness stuff, and they had a jujitsu program as well. So I went back and I signed up initially just for karate, and it was a Shotokan karate, or um, uh, it's a long story. We're going to have to talk about the history of martial arts and Taekwondo in one of these things. But anyway, Shotokan karate and Taekwondo are essentially the same thing. I know a lot of people are going to argue with me about that, and they're going to say, that's not true. Gishin Funakoshi did blah, blah, blah. Shut up. It's the same thing. You use the same katas or forms. For those of you who are not into martial arts, it's those little pre-planned, exercise routines where you're punching and kicking and blocking imaginary opponents. They're in Taekwondo they're called hungs, something like that. But anyway, it's been a while since I had to say any of that in Korean. It's essentially the same thing. So it's Sun Mu Kwan or something, I think, style Taekwondo is essentially Shotokan karate. And I had studied Shotokan before when I was overseas. When I was in Germany, there was a guy who taught Shotokan nearby. So I went there for a little while. So I was familiar with Shotokan and its familiarity to me from Taekwondo because I'd already been through like 3 different Taekwondo schools. And so I signed up. I started doing it, and it's really good exercise. So that's how I was starting to get back into shape because I couldn't do anything else because of my shoulder injury. So I was doing the smart thing, and I was getting more cardio exercise, which helped me trim down because my weight has gone up and down. At one point, I was 220 pounds. And that's when I was my heaviest, when I was bulking up the most. And I always called it bulking up, like when I was just fat. But I wasn't just fat, but it was like you would tell people you're bulking up because you were never going to do the trimming down phase. You were never going to do the cutting, so that you were all ripped. You were just going to keep bulking. And that was kind of what I did for years. And people would ask, and they're like, "Oh, where are you? What phase are you in?" "Well, I'm bulking up," because I was always bulking up because I wasn't going to compete in any kind of thing. I didn't need to get ripped. I just wanted to be big and strong. And it's an ego thing. I know it's probably an inadequacy thing from childhood because I was a slight child who got picked on a lot until I learned how to punch people in the face, and then figured out that I enjoyed punching people in the face. And so here I am at an almost 57-year-old man who likes choking people out. I can't help it. This society did this to me. The world made me who I am. You know, you would you have adopted the darkness, and I was born in it. So, for a Batman reference, and I hate Christian Bale. He was the worst Batman ever. Anyhow, cardio was when we discovered that I had an artery problem because after doing, karate is cardio. You're doing punching, kicking, you're doing these set things, you're doing some sparring and all this stuff. It's cardio exercise. And so I was doing that. And I started to, like a few months into it, I started to realize my little toe on my right foot keeps going numb. Don't know what it is. I was having some sciatic pain, I was having hip pain, and I'm riddled with arthritis because of all the other stupid things I did to myself over the years. So it wasn't a surprise that I had some joint pains. I already had the bad knee that hurt all the time. I had the bad shoulders that hurt all the time. My elbows hurt all the time. My hands are arthritic. So having a toe go numb was kind of like, well, I guess this is what happens when you're this age and you have this many issues. But that kept getting worse. And then it was a couple of toes. And then it was all of my toes. And then it was like my foot would go numb. And if I didn't stop what I was doing, my entire leg would go numb. And we couldn't figure out what that was. So going back and forth to the doctor, and they're like, we think it's a sciatic issue. It's pinching a nerve, it's cutting off blood or whatever. So they kept sending me to get an x-ray or get this or get that. And they sent me to a physical therapist and, an ortho guy. And the ortho guy is like, there's nothing wrong with your lower back. Yeah, I had arthritis. He's like, you have arthritis there, but I don't see anything that would explain what you're going through right now. And so they kept sending me back and forth. And they even made me go through physical therapy. And I did like 12 sessions of physical therapy for a lower back problem that I didn't have. And it just kept making my problem that I did have worse. But the issue kept progressing and it kept getting worse and worse. And it was like it was spreading. So finally, they sent me for a CT scan with contrast. Well, I take that back. First, they did what's called an arterial Doppler test or something. I forget what it's called. I thought it was that, but they put blood pressure cuffs on you all over the place, like upper arm, upper leg, lower leg, and then this machine inflates them at different times and studies the results. And it's basically testing your blood flow throughout your body. And that detected that I was having a reduced blood flow to my right leg, specifically my lower leg. And so that resulted in being sent for a CT scan with contrast where they could look at my arteries. And so they only did the lower body at that point. And my femoral artery in my right leg was completely blocked. So we discovered that I had peripheral artery disease. Your peripheral arteries are down in your lower body. They go through your hips and, your pelvic area and then spread out. And anyway, after a lot of studying and scanning and analyzing and everything else, they went in and cleaned out my artery, got roto-rootered, and they cleared out my some arteries and they put stents in my lower body. So that was how we actually discovered that I had, clogging arteries, and eventually that led to a heart attack. So I suppose if I had been doing cardio like I should have been in order to keep my heart healthy, we would have discovered that I had this artery problem a lot sooner because I would have had those symptoms a lot sooner, and I maybe wouldn't have had a heart attack because we could have caught it before that happened. So when we talk about are we exercising the right way? Not only to protect our body and strengthen our heart and the rest of us, but in order to know what our condition is on the inside. Most people, I say most because I think it is actually most people work out because they're concerned about the way they look on the outside. They're not so concerned about what's happening on the inside. Yeah, they want to have a strong and healthy heart and lungs and all that other stuff, but it's the result that they get externally is kind of the motivation for a lot of people who go to the gym. And this because of all the TikTok videos and all the times that people are in the gym staring in the mirror instead of lifting that weight. That's probably not enough weight to accomplish what they're trying to do. Anyhow, onward, they should all be doing more cardio. But strengthening your heart, keeping your heart healthy, that's what cardio is going to do. That lifting those weights isn't going to do that at all. It doesn't do anything for your endurance and for your cardiovascular health. Especially if you're lifting heavy weights. I mean, if you're lifting light weights and doing like circuit training or something, that's different. If you're doing like, what's that weird, stupid thing they do? I don't know. It's like a cult. CrossFit. If you're doing CrossFit and stuff, that's resistance exercise with some weights and stuff like that. That's different because that's kind of cardio anyway when you're doing circuit-like training. But if you're just going in there and pumping iron because you're trying to get big and strong, you're not doing anything for your heart. You have to have cardiovascular health. You have to get cardio in. And they recommend a minimum of 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes of cardio exercise a day. Hardly nobody on the planet gets that, because the only people who get 30 minutes of cardiovascular exercise every day are people who are doing it on purpose. You don't accidentally get 30 minutes of good cardio in. So you have to be going to the gym, getting on the treadmill or jogging or whatever it is you're going to do. You're going to do aerobics. People still do aerobics. I don't know. It was fun to watch on TV in the 80s, but I don't know if people still do it. So, because I see everybody doing yoga now and riding on ellipticals and stuff. I don't know if aerobics is still a thing, but it should be. And they need to bring back those little leg warmer things and the tights, because that was when things were cool. But not rat tails and not, anyhow, I digress. So get in there, get your exercise, get real exercise. You have to take care of your heart. And it's possible that doing cardiovascular, things, doing cardio exercises might help you identify that you have a problem before that problem identifies itself for you by trying to murder you, like my heart did, and like so many other people's hearts did. Now, not everyone has a cardio issue that causes a heart attack, but in my case, cardio would have identified my problem a long time before it did, because I wasn't doing any cardio. When I started doing cardio, that's when we discovered that I had an arterial issue, that I had peripheral artery disease. And that's when we went, oh, I wonder what's going on in this part where the heart is. Because if my arteries down there were clogging, we had to assume that they were clogging in other places too. And they were. And we didn't catch it before it tried to kill me. So that's my advice for you. Get out there, do some exercise. Cardio exercise. Work that heart. Keep your heart strong and healthy. Let the young people worry about how they look in the mirror, because they can't, they can't fight or anything anyway. So, they're just going to have to look good. Let them look good, but make sure you take care of your heart. And that's all I'm going to say. So you learned a lot tonight about me and about stupid things that I've done to myself over the years, and stupid injuries I've had. But in the long run, going back to karate class helped me figure out that I had an artery issue and that something was going to have to be done for it. And so, I don't know, go to karate class. Jiu-jitsu is good too. Jiu-jitsu really upped my cardio. So doing karate and jiu-jitsu is a good combination. And, maybe prevent yourself from having a heart attack like me. I'll catch you next time. Not sure if this is going to be posted tonight. It's a Wednesday night, and it's getting late. I probably won't post it until tomorrow, but I'll catch everybody later. Take care of yourselves. Good night.